Drama organ, drama organ, drama organ. We have 3 no longer used. It's time for the drama organ. Can we tell I'm excited? Let's just get into it. Feels appropriate that we are starting off this series with Gwendy. We ended with Gwendy for the Underworld, and obviously I adored Gwendy's Underworld. Loved that Gwendy included the blood sacrifice, obviously making changes to fit epic, and that we had left last that Odysseus was following a spirit that I was saying kind of looked a little like a firefly, you know, a little white dot. So I'm interested to see Gwendy's Tiresias, really all these Tiresiases. I'm expecting they'll all look extremely young. I do know that the singer is quite young. Again, let's remember in the Underworld, Tiresias is an extremely old man. He lived even longer than old Nestor, who we always joke is old. Tiresias was sort of blessed by the gods with getting quite a long life. But anywho, let's see Tiresias. Interestingly, I guess maybe his tunic is covered. Usually Odysseus' tunic is blue. Oh, nice transparency there. The glow. White eye. Oh, I love the shadows. Very nice.
There is a world where I help you get home, but that's not a world I know.
I was wondering if you would do like all white eyes or something.
I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man. I see portrayals of betrayal and a brother's final stand.
Nice.
I see you on the brink of death. I see you try a final breath. I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer.
Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, there's the tunic. Okay. Oh, the cloak is in the front. Okay.
And sailed through the toughest of hells. Now you tell us our efforts for nothing.
I love that.
I see
great
your
gesture.
palace covered in red. Faces of
suitors.
men who had long believed you're dead.
Oh, that's cool. The setting that Gwendy has that layer on is why Odysseus turns pink during that, which is a nice touch. I like that the suitors are kind of faceless in this bit, because one, obviously he hasn't met the suitors, he doesn't know who they are, but it's really important, I think, for a lot of us to remember that the suitors, even though yes, some of them do get mentioned by name, like Antinous and Amphinomus and Eurymachus, really kind of the big 3, all of the suitors are in the same boat. They are all equally terrible, and they are all committing the same essential violation and sin. The way I tell people to think of it, because if anybody says like, well, all they were doing was hanging out at his house, I said, it's essentially stalking and an assault. Like, think of somebody who shows up at your house and just encamps themselves there for 3 years, eating your food, your best food, constantly saying, I want you to marry me. No matter how much you say no and ask them to leave, they don't. For 3, some later sources sometimes 5, 3 to 5 years. Incessantly, non-stop, without relief. What they do is an assault. And yes, it's a massive Xenia violation and all these things, so yes, but for the Greeks, they really understood that. I find it interesting that some people don't get the idea that, well, they were just in his house, he could ask them to leave. I'm like, I don't think you understand what they've been doing for 3 to 5 years to his wife and child, because both of them have had to deal with this. And what they do already in the Odyssey is bad enough. It's horrifying. And as somebody who's unfortunately had to deal with like having a person who wouldn't leave you alone, who sends you things unsolicited, who does all these things, it really, really does damage. So again, I kind of like that we've made the suitors here in this image faceless, because yes, one, we haven't met them yet, but two, it's because in a way, they are kind of a nameless, faceless mass, because it's every suitor who's there is in the same boat. No suitor is better or worse than another. They are all terrible because they are all committing the same crime / sin, right?
I see your wife
beautiful Penelope.
With a man who is haunting, a man with a trail.
Yeah, that trail is called Troy.
Woo! I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man.
Ooh, we've got a little, I'm not sure, are we doing, I want to say it's a teeny bit of chromatic aberration on these sort of images that are flying past Tiresias, but it could just be the layer mode that it's on. But I like the way they're moving. We've got kind of a glow trail behind them. It feels very ethereal. And again, emphasizing that like you're the same person but a different person, because Homer makes it really clear in the Odyssey. I mean, most especially it's in the Iliad, but you do get this in the Odyssey, that like the war at Troy was mankind essentially at its worst and their most destructive. So it's like we talk about the Trail of Bodies, and I know that Jorge is really thinking of like, oh, all of the crew members who died because of Poseidon, and then you will have the ones who die as a result of the Thunderbolt, and then also later the suitors. I'm like, really, Homer would say it's the war at Troy. That Trail of Bodies is the entire city of Troy that got sacked. Like, the sacking of Troy was such a violent event and so horrifying. And it's part of why you essentially get the downfall of the heroic age. Is the war at Troy is sort of the last hurrah, but like nobody's really celebrating it. Even in the Odyssey, when they talk about Troy and the war, it causes people to start weeping. It's just profound grief and sadness. And the only time really stories at Troy aren't met that way are by people who don't have some kind of personal connection to it. So anybody who was a part, even tangentially, to the war at Troy, so that includes like spouses of heroes who went off, it causes profound grief. And that's the interesting thing about like Kleos and the Greek hero, is that like the Greek hero is always seeking like the perfect death. Like you die at the right time, in the right moment, in the right way. And yet going to Troy, for so many of them, they were there because of a pact. Or you get someone like Achilles who goes just for glory. He's not a part of the pact. He had no reason to be there other than glory. He wanted to go there to kill and cause destruction. And he wanted glory, which means he did also essentially go there for a suicide mission, because he was likely, I mean, he knew it meant he would die. But it's like, in a way they celebrated it, but at the same time they recognized the profound, almost insanity of it. They recognized that it's also awful and horrible. I mean, again, Homer, you get this way more in the Iliad because we're at Troy in the Iliad, but the Odyssey really shows it through the effect the war had on the veterans, in that you see Nestor, you see Menelaus, and you see Odysseus, and how this war has affected them. And how much pain lingers, because Troy, yay, it was a great feat, you won this war, but like at what cost? The cost was essentially everyone's humanity, and you're trying to build that back in the Odyssey. Like it's people trying to return to what goes on after Troy. So I think that's part of why I think of the underworld in bits of epic, where the reason I harped on like, what about the infant? What about Troy? Like, you started in Troy for a reason, is that the real effect upon Odysseus' psyche as a character is Troy. It's the war at Troy. And it's part of why I say I feel like Polites is kind of a distraction to the story, because you start with him chucking an infant off a wall, which even, again, the ancient Greeks would look at and be like, wow, yeah, no, like you're ethically, morally in the right in this situation. We can't fault you for it, but that's not easy. Most of the time in Greek mythology, if, say, you got a prophecy, like, for example, look at Paris. Paris was prophesied to essentially doom Troy. So King Priam basically was essentially given a choice, like, you could kill your own son, or you can let him live and it's going to be your doom. So he basically shirked the duty off to someone else. He delegated it to someone else because he didn't want to have to do that. Or you get Oedipus's parents, who were told this boy is destined to grow up and kill his father and marry his mother. And so they delegated it to someone else because they couldn't bear to do it. Killing of infants, even when you're being presented with a situation where everybody would kind of understand, it wasn't easy. Odysseus did it. I feel like that should have been the real thing that flowed through. That as a culmination of everything that has happened as Troy. I mean, Odysseus and even the other heroes we meet are war-torn vets. And they very much are in the Odyssey. It's all right there. There's, I mean, the scene that's in book 4 of the Odyssey where we're with Telemachus and he goes to meet Menelaus and Helen of Sparta. Menelaus, like, he starts trying to talk about Troy and he just collapses in tears because it's so hard to talk about. And the only way that Helen is even able to try to talk to Telemachus or any others about it is she essentially kind of has to give them drugs, like anti-anxiety meds, to calm them down because everybody is weeping. And she recognizes that. And she's like, only way we're getting through this. So it's interesting. Sorry, that's a massive tangent. I just think of it because of the trail of bodies, and I'm like, I know what we're insinuating and what the song is insinuating, but when you think of it in terms of the Odyssey, it's the war at Troy. It'd be the whole city of Troy, because ultimately he masterminded the plan that led to its destruction. So like every death at Troy links to that, and because again his Kleos up until the Polyphemus incident is tied to his metis, his craft, which led to his ability to get them inside the gates of Troy to take it. Nice fade out there. I see you with, I love the hooded figures. The hooded figures give very Hellfire vibes. For those who know Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, the great, probably the greatest villain song ever written being Hellfire. There is a whole image of these like red hooded figures who come up while the villain Frollo is singing his song. And what they're saying in the back is actually mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, which means my fault, my greatest fault. And you say mea culpa usually when you're saying like my bad, basically. But obviously, Gwendy, I'm wondering, probably took inspiration for that when you come here and you have this backing choir that's singing essentially all the stuff they're going to have to go through. Which again, interestingly, the prophecy of Tiresias in the underworld section of the Odyssey is pretty specific. Like he tells him, don't touch the cows or you're going to get home late. Like you're on a path to get there, but if you touch those cows on the island of Helios, disaster's going to strike. Which exactly it does. Odysseus then gets blown off course and has to spend basically 7 years with Calypso, and all of his crewmates die as a result. I mean, by their own action. And it can be seen kind of as a yourself out move when they do it, even in the text. It's fascinating. But what's interesting is the choir here that's singing about like the Scylla throat and all of these other things. Odysseus actually gets the hint about Scylla, about Charybdis, the question marks, like the sirens, that whole area. He's given advice by Circe on that, because let's remember, in the Odyssey, we go to the underworld and then we go back to Circe's island because we have to bury Elpenor and we have to do those rites. And then Circe essentially gives him advice. She goes, you're going to have to sail past the sirens, like here's how you get past them. And because I think you're dumb enough to want to listen to them, here's how you can sail through while you can still listen. She goes, and then you're going to come to like a fork in the road and you're going to have to pick, and it's a lesser of two evils, and like you're still like, okay. But obviously we're not going to do the double round trip here in the musical, which makes sense. It would feel kind of jarring to go back, especially when you want to end an act here. So Jorge hid it in the choir in the back, which I do think is clever music writing, to have it hidden in the back. So like if you hear it, you hear it. And if you don't, it doesn't cause a massive misunderstanding for the rest of the musical.
I see a man who gets to make it all alive, but it's no longer you.
Very dramatic, the bright light. I love the motion of the clothes from the wind. Ugh. Oh, that's supposed to be Odysseus, isn't it? I was like, oh, is that actually old man Tiresias? Then I realized it's supposed to be an image of Odysseus. Got it. So this is interesting. Interesting. Beautifully done. Obviously, the animation is gorgeous. Like, Gwendy has beautiful animation. So the idea of Odysseus being like a different person when he gets home. I talked a bit about Troy, but I think I've also mentioned many times that it's really the Polyphemus incident that really is the thing that causes the change in Odysseus. Because when he pulls the trick of calling himself Autis, of no man, he essentially adopts anonymity. But here's the problem. all of a hero is tied to his kleos. His kleos is tied to your name and your identity. So by willingly claiming to be anonymity yourself, you strip yourself of that identity. So again, the story of the Odyssey, as much as it is a physical journey, is about a journey of identity for Odysseus, especially in the context of the epic itself. So we come into the Odyssey and all of Odysseus's kleos, if you will, is tied to those exploits at Troy, as I mentioned, that metis, that craft, everything he got at Troy. But let's remember the Iliad has already been written. So we've already written a story about a hero whose kleos is tied to Troy, that being Achilles, right? So when he does the whole anonymity, I am no man, it works. It gets him and his men out of the cave, but he has essentially willfully thrown away all his kleos, which is part of why you get the reason he fires back at Polyphemus, even when Polyphemus by this point, and they've also heard other cyclopes say it, Polyphemus is a son of Poseidon. The reason that Odysseus fires back his name is it's sort of a last-ditch attempt to get that identity back, to try and keep that kleos, that identity that he already had. He's trying, that's why he does. Yeah, well, I'm Odysseus of Ithaca, eat shit, you ain't nothing. Like, that's part of why he does it. It is extremely arrogant and it's a lot of hubris, but part of it is tied to the fact that he kind of just said, well, I can't be who I am. Then he's like, well, shit, no, I need to be who I am, but it doesn't work anymore. So then when we get to the next chapter, which is where we're on Aeaea, we're on Circe's island, and even when we go to the underworld, there's an interesting thing that Homer does, which is where he starts describing like where the sun is rising and setting. Your sense of time and space feels really off. Like even what direction they need to sail to get to that entrance to the underworld, like it seems like it changes. So where exactly is he going? His internal compass is completely off. And it's also why he stays there a whole year when he doesn't need to. Like he could have freed his men and they could have ditched and Circe would have helped them. It would have been a real quick pit stop. But he kind of lollygags for like a year, and it's because he's kind of in a rut. He doesn't really have a sense of who he is or what he's doing, so he doesn't feel that rush to get home. Like he's kind of dazed and confused on Aeaea. And it's not until he goes to the underworld and he gets that prophecy from Tiresias, which basically says, get your ass in gear and get home. And also he has conversations with, infamously, I'm going to have to mention him, Agamemnon, which I know everybody got on me for mentioning how much I wish we'd had Agamemnon in Epic. The reason I say that is because, one, the story of what happens to Agamemnon when he gets home is brought up constantly in the Odyssey. I mean, from book one. In fact, we open book one after doing the invocation of the Muses. The first thing that characters start speaking dialogue about, it's the gods on Olympus, and they're talking about Agamemnon. They're like, look at what happened to Agamemnon. Like, that's literally how they open. And the point is to provide Odysseus an example of something that could be waiting for him at home. His greatest fear is he's going to come home and find that either total destruction, nothing's left, Penelope could have left him. She could have gone off with a different man, reasonably thinking he's dead. If he got declared dead, she could have gone off and married someone else. Someone else could be in his home and he could get killed. And again, the conversation he has with Agamemnon down in the underworld, part of the thing that for me makes it really sad, yes, as much as we can all crack jokes at Agamemnon and the whole house of Atreus and like what a shit show they are, don't get me wrong, I'm first in line there. Something Agamemnon says, which really also like, it's hitting Odysseus really hard, as he says, I got killed, I didn't even get to see my son, my children. And again, Agamemnon and Clytemnestra had children. Yes, Iphigenia was dead, but you have Electra and you have Orestes. He's like, I didn't get to see them. I died without knowing what kind of people they were. I died without knowing they were alive or okay. This is what Odysseus is so terrified he's going to find when he gets home. And Agamemnon is giving it to him a bit like a warning, basically saying, we've been gone. We don't know what's been happening on the home front. There's been essentially no communication back and forth, right? So this becomes part of the impetus that makes Odysseus go, I'm getting home, and I'm getting home ASAP. No more side quests, no more tangents, no more stopping at other places. I'm getting home. So this is where we transition from Odysseus as a hero, where his kleos, this glory, is no longer tied to his exploits at Troy. Remember, he willingly threw that away. It's gone now. He's becoming the hero whose kleos is going to be tied to his nostos, his journey home, which is what the story of the Odyssey is. This is an epic that is about a guy getting home. He's going to have the journey home of all journey homes. And all of his kleos is going to be in the completion of that nostos, and that will include the slaughter of the suitors because it's the taking back of his kingdom and his rightful place. And so that's where you get this shift after he speaks with Tiresias and other people in the underworld. So it's a combination of Tiresias and Agamemnon. He does also talk with Achilles and some others, but we're trying to drive Odysseus into stepping forth as the new man who's going to have his Kleos about getting home. Which is where, for me, the idea of he becomes more or less ruthless is like, not really. He's pretty much the same as he is. I mean, in the Odyssey, he's equally as ruthless at the start and at the end. The difference is that he's not distracted by thinking of himself in the past. He's now so hardcore focused on get to Ithaca. Because up until really we get to, I mean, the underworld, he's been lollygagging. He's been taking side tangents. He's been like getting distracted and wasting time. Because he's still thinking of himself as that hero from Troy. That's done now. You need to be a different hero. You're a hero who gets home. And it's going to be hella fucking dramatic. Great. But sorry, I wanted to do that because I understand why, like, the underworld is absolutely the turning point for Odysseus. You know, like the old must die and the new must rise kind of thing. But it's much more nuanced and like a little different in the Odyssey versus in Epic. And it's part of why I think some of my problems are there with Epic, where I'm like, the idea of him becoming esoterically more ruthless through the story, I'm like, not really, which is where I think it's a little muddled through, and where I think, like, you know, some edits to like tighten it. If he really wants to keep that message, he can make it work. Just tighten it a bit. And also, yes, that was a beautiful animatic. Like, Gwendy never lets me down. Next here we have Jojo. Is it Fraga? Fraga? I don't think G ever sounds like a Y, does it? Like Freya? I don't know. Jojo. We have Jojo. This is a name I have seen. I don't think I've seen anything by Jojo yet, though. But we do have Flash Warning and Violence. Ooh, purple. Oh, wow. Look at that Odysseus. Oh, this is interesting. Fascinating. It's like a library. It's an old man Tiresias.
With the answers you seek, time
Interesting.
I've unlocked it. I
love all the scrolls.
Running free. There is a world.
Oh, we're gonna do it visually on a scroll?
But that's not a
Again, the transparency. Oh, beautiful animations of him moving place to place.
I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man. I see portrayals of betrayal.
They're blank. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
that's cool.
I see you on the brink.
I like that a lot, Jojo. What a great idea. Because again, obviously in the underworld, it's just Tiresias telling him the prophecy. That makes sense. The Odyssey is an epic poem. It's part of an oral tradition. Everything is done through spoken word. When you get the chance to use animation, you can substitute visuals to do a lot of work for you. And I love the idea that he has these scrolls, he lays them down, and images start to appear. And again, given the vagary, if you will, of the prophecy here in Epic, in addition to only getting images that you have to try to interpret, it's less like a prophecy and almost more like omens. The interesting thing, like the difference sort of between prophecy and omens as it is in Greek mythology, is that prophecy is pretty hyper-specific. Like, they will break it down for you and give you the detail. Omens are left a lot more to interpretation. It's like, oh, these eagles came in and they went to the left, or these eagles destroyed a hare, and like, you need someone to interpret that for you, versus going to get a prophecy from like an oracle and they're just gonna be like, this kid's gonna grow up to kill his father and marry his mother. Hyper-specificity versus I need to try and interpret. So this is almost more like omens than it is like prophecy. But again, it's visually really interesting. And I love that we get Odysseus' sort of reactions where he's kind of confused. He's trying to figure out, what are we talking about? Even though, yes, that should be pretty freaking obvious. But also, again, making this like a library that we have Tiresias working in. I love that we have an old man Tiresias. That makes me so happy. And again, that he's like huge and he looms over Odysseus. Again, Odysseus Short King.
But it's no longer.
Whoa! What? He just pulls back the old man head and he's a young man now? I wonder if, okay, so I don't know obviously how much Jojo knows about mythology, but there is a pretty wild story involving Tiresias, which is that he lived for 7 years, I believe, as a woman. It's because he found 2 snakes copulating in the middle of the road, and he kind of whacked at them with a stick, and that pissed off, I think, Hera, and so she turned him into a woman, and he had to live as a woman for 7 years, and eventually he gets changed back. But I wonder if that's kind of a reference to that, because again, obviously souls do not really change appearance in the underworld, but that is super cool. It's a great bit of animation, and the work that Jojo has done and how like he kind of moves as a spirit, there's really great fluidity and motion and shapes going on here. Oh, this is so nice.
Can't be. We've suffered and sailed through the toughest of hells. Now you tell us our efforts for nothing. I see your past.
Is that him as a woman? He looks like a woman. I think this is a nod to that. Jojo!
Who had long believed you're dead.
Oh, I like that image of just the helmet front and obviously the kind of big smile. So it looks like it's pulling on, Corinthian helms. I'll put an image here. It's a really famous helm shape. Now, obviously in ancient Greece, there were, throughout the different ages, many different kinds of helms, because again, there wasn't really like standing armies and all of your armor was kind of like homemade. And so there's a lot of differences, but there were some sort of design consistencies, if you will, between different regions and areas. And obviously through the different times, the most famous one being this image, this helm. So I like that we did it, and I like that it was in such close up. It's literally just face. Very well done.
I see your wife with a man who is haunting, a man with a trail.
Oh, Penelope looking gorgeous. Love that Grecian nose. I see you.
Ooh, I see a song of past romance.
Oh, that's definitely. Oh, that's Penelope. Oh, wow. Look at that. Again, this, oh my god, I love that. Again, this is kind of giving me the vibes of that sequence from Prince of Egypt. I mentioned way back, I think when we were in Warrior of the Mines, and I think it was Wolfie who did it. Wolfie had a whole section that reminded me of this nightmare scene that's in the animated film The Prince of Egypt by DreamWorks, where they did it in the style of Egyptian hieroglyph and temple paintings, and it's beautiful and it's uncanny and it suits that it's done in a nightmare sequence. And Wolfie did it with Warrior of the Mind, where Athena's sort of showing the story of their past. And in this, there's something like an element of that here, with the uncanniness that they're moving like puppets. And it's this idea of sort of like, you can't fight fate. You can't really. It's fate is, it's almost like the more you fight fate, the faster you make it happen. The more you try to avoid it, the more likely it is to happen. And part of that you can look at is like, when a prophecy is given, when a fate seems to have been sort of determined, it's an element of humans behave as humans do. You can't, it's sort of inevitable. You can't help human nature. They're inevitably going to end up doing this, whether they mean to or not, whether they realize it or not, no matter how much they try to avoid it. In fact, often in trying to avoid it, again, they make it happen faster. And it's just because humans are humans. We're hot messes. I love how uncanny this is.
I see you on the brink of death. I see you trying.
Whoa, that's a helmet and a half. I wonder if all those different people, these images, these people we saw going through, I don't know if these are meant to be Tiresias at different stages of life, though I don't think he was ever a fighter, or if these are meant to be like, again, kind of Easter eggs of the people he meets in the underworld, whether it's any of the number of heroes, Agamemnon, Achilles, he sees Heracles, and like, Telamonian and Ajax, which is like the most heartbreaking moment for me personally, like it always breaks my heart. And all these other people. I wonder if that's what that's a nod to. Someone will have to tell me, because Jojo, I feel like you're throwing Easter eggs for myth nerds like me, but I could be going crazy.
To make it all alive, but it's no longer you.
Interesting. Shutting the door on him. Fascinating. Oh, I like the columns there. Kind of, was it Doric style it looks? Closer to what kind of would have been around in the age, for the Bronze Age. So there are, I mean, famously, three kind of styles of ancient columns, if you will. Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. That was beautiful, by the way, Jojo. I'm obsessed. And Doric kind of being the earliest, the most simple looking, and what evidence we have of what, again, palaces and kind of architecture of the Bronze Age was, the best place you can try and look is at the excavations of the Palace of Knossos on Crete. And it's a it's closer to a Doric column than anything else, though it's, I don't think, like quite Doric, but you weren't seeing anything like Ionic or Corinthian yet. Those start coming in much later. And again, a lot of the reasons they have those names is not just in terms of style, it's also kind of like areas of Greece where they were most popular. So I love that. That was gorgeous. Jojo, there are so many cool things in there. Again, this sort of shape shifting of Tiresias. I did look, I mean, whether or not that was supposed to be him as a younger man, I'm going to, in my head, believe that he went and took his woman form, because he did live 7 years as a woman. Which again, the spirits would not be able to do this, but I just think it's kind of cool. It looks cool. It provides some really interesting animation choices by Jojo. The whole laying out of the scroll, showing some flashing images, which Odysseus, you know, has to try to interpret. The different choir voices being very distinct, different people. That was so cool. I liked that so much. And just again, having the opening with just this, I didn't really touch too much on it, but the sound design and stuff in the opening, creating a sense of space. It was very interesting. Very unique. I liked it a lot. Finally, for the last No Longer You, I have Ximena. Ximena is back. We got nothing of Ximena in the underworld thus far. I think we just had Puppeteer was the last we saw of Ximena. Oh, we are already in greens, and I am curious. Let's go. We are on the shore. Oh.
I am the prophet with
bandage over the eyes. Makes sense. And a young man. Probably to fit the singer.
I see past and future running free. There is a world where I help you get home.
Ooh, I love the glowing line work.
Not a world I know. What? I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man. I see portrayals of betrayal and a brother's
keeping him faceless, but it's clearly Eurylochus
I
with
see
the hair
you
outline.
on the brink of death. I see you try a final breath. I see a man who gets
disembodied
to
hands.
make it home alive, but it's no longer.
I guess it's like a sweat and anxiety drop.
This can't be. We've suffered and sailed through the
I like the flashbacks and keeping them kind of grainy, moving the camera around. Nice, nice, nice.
I see your palace
Ooh,
covered
the nice little
in
red drop. Ooh, good contrast.
faces of men
Again, the faceless suitors.
who had
Love it.
long believed you're dead. I see
Her
your
hair in a
life
ponytail.
with a man who
Again, would be braided.
a man
But it is funny.
with a trail of bodies. Woo! I see a song of past romance. I see the sacrifice of man. I see portrayals of betrayal and a brother's final stand. I see you on the brink of death. I see you try your final breath. I see a man who gets to make it home alive, but it's no longer you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Interesting. 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 Does he wake up in a sweat? Oh no, he's still in the water. Okay, so we really did throw him in the water. I was wondering if that would be more like metaphor than anything else, but no, we straight threw him in the water. Okay, pretty straightforward. Really nice. Again, a little elements like the disembodied hands and everything else, like little enough of body horror. Again, it's probably the youngest looking of the Tiresias that we've had, giving him the blindfold to show that he's blind. Everybody kind of gives him a staff, although actually no, I don't think Jojo did. I could be wrong, maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah, it's only been a few minutes. My brain's a sieve.
It's fine.
Again, these cool greens and blues, so you can then contrast with a really bright warm red. Very nice. Very nice. Overall, some really great no longer used. We're then on to Monster, final 3 songs of the Underworld, and we are done with what I guess is technically Act 1 of the musical. Once again, it is very strange to like go tripping down memory lane on this. But all we have left is Monster, and I'm curious to see how that will be animated, because a lot of that is really kind of going to be left to the animator to bring dynamism and motion and visual interest as to something that is essentially an aria where he's not really physically doing anything, right? Like he's standing on the stage singing in his feelings kind of thing, right? So as an animator, you have to bring all the visual interest to that. So it'll be interesting to see.